can go to work and otherwise be functional and so forth. I think we have the internet. I think even if you want to pretend it's a right, there's so much like online. Like even Bernie Sanders would say like, yeah, we can massively reduce the cost of education by just giving people like online tutorials to do. And for a very intelligent person, that is enough that they can be educated off online tutorials. Very intelligent people are going to learn, you know, with whatever. They're going to learn with a chalkboard. They're going to learn from a book. They're going to learn from whatever they have available.
What if they're 5 years old?
Okay, so yeah, I think it's just about babies. If a kid is not learning productively and they're 5 years old, they should be given some level of, not as a right, but as a service that the government is offering, some level of child care, of like daycare, basically. And it's great if you can add in, you know, some ways that students could learn and improve during that. But I just, it's not, I think education's about education. Education should be about excellence. It shouldn't be about how can we pour as much of our resources as possible into, you know, getting Johnny to count to 10 when Johnny is like not very.
Wow. Is a society that maximizes its educated population better off than a society that doesn't?
Absolutely.
So why wouldn't you advocate for maximizing?
Yeah, when I mean educated, I mean people who are actually educated, not people who are, you know, barely fun. If you should find for Johnny something that Johnny can do productively in society, and it might not be academics.
But how would you know that when they're 5?
If Johnny is testing at like a 70 IQ, probably Johnny's like not on the track for a STEM education.
He's not on track for a STEM education if he's testing at a 70 IQ.
You can tell. You can easily test a 5-year-old to see like you know, what intelligence and aptitude range they are. Like, people have this weird idea that you just throw
quote-unquote towards intelligence quotients, which is fraught territory. But I'm going to let you rock because I'm actually not even trying to open that can of worms right now and the problematic nature of that. But let's just go with your hypothetical. Let's say Johnny has a 70 IQ. Does Johnny not have a right to, like, learn math, learn history? Particularly if Johnny's a little black boy, does he have the right to learn about his history and his heritage?
For sure. Look, there's plenty of I think it should be encouraged by whatever school if the parent can afford with the resources that they have and maybe that are subsidized by the government, afford to go to a school. And if you're concerned about it, send them to a school that like really emphasizes it, or get some on any of the plenty of resources that are at the kids' fingertips that they should be allowed to watch, you know, YouTube videos or read books, access libraries, and if the parents want to send them to special schools that emphasize history on whatever, yeah, absolutely. Like no one should stand in the way of Johnny to access that material.
Hey, Black, quick question, brother. How would you feel about history not being taught in the school system at all?
I would be opposed to that. I think history is important. What would you advocate against history being taught in schools?
I think oftentimes history is arguably like propaganda. It's, you know, it's written by the victor, and it can have a slant to it. And you know, I think if the school stuck to fundamentals, that a lot of controversy could be averted.
What would be the fundamentals?
STEM, just fact-based learning.
So not language or art or things of that nature.
It seems like history can be fact-based, but you don't think that science can be taught in a way that's propagandistic?
Taught in a way that's what?
Propagandistic.
When you talk about like the rocket equation, like you're talking too much about rockets, you might wanna like join a weird political group or self-hate because you learned about like force and acceleration and velocity and like I don't quite understand how science is. I mean, if you want to talk about biological
Did you just want a better example than the one you gave? Because I can give you like three. So one that has been controversial, particularly from the perspective of the conservative types historically, is teaching evolution.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to argue that people aren't ready for that, you could make an argument.
I would never argue that. I'm saying if science is supposed to be fundamental because it is a domain of learning that is fact-based and not susceptible to propaganda, I think you need to rethink that premise because I don't think that premise.
I mean, I'm for people being able to learn whatever they want. But yeah, I mean, it's an interest. If you want to emphasize history because you think history is like achieving a certain social outcome, I mean, yeah, you're right. Like once you understand that the Earth goes around the sun, that we evolved from certain creatures, like certain ideas that others may want to propagandize you with, like get challenged. I mean, even IQ was a problem for you. To even mention that there is such a measure.
IQ is a subject.
I'm sorry, like I was just going to go.
That is controversial, is all I was trying to say. But go ahead, Anthony.
Yeah. So to your point about science, I think it's cool to teach science as theories. Like if it's not actual fact, I think like evolution, for example, is a theory, and if they're teaching it in such a way where they're making it clear that this is disputed, that there's other points of views, great. I don't think that's necessarily the approach to quote unquote history, and I can see benefits if the focus was more on STEM and just fundamentals, and let people learn history. Let them learn it from whether it be their parents. Let them self-study. Their own curiosity. They find sources and develop their own sense of history. I could see a benefit in that.
I guess what's worrying about this approach is it's an exercise in line drawing, and the line drawing exercise is going to inherently be controversial. And one of the reasons why is because it's not always easy to delineate the domain of the fact from the domain of the opinion or just gray areas. Like that's more of an epistemic limit. Like we don't always know. Sometimes we think we know things, and then it turns out we discover things, and we realize, oh shit, we didn't know what we thought we knew. And then there's also political motivations behind what is allowed to be a part of the curriculum and what is left out. So if you have a vested interest in promoting a patriotic society of willing and able-bodied citizens, you might want to downplay all the stuff about how certain groups of people's ancestors got literally kidnapped from Africa and then brought across whole ass oceans to become slaves. And then after that, were routinely discriminated against and treated as second-class citizens. Right? Yeah. Or the native peoples that were already on the land that got colonized, got wiped out slowly but surely, and even sometimes used like smallpox-laced blankets to wipe out entire populations of native
Beautiful.
peoples.
I think you're actually making my point, bro.
really, because I'm disagreeing with it. What I'm saying is that line drawing exercise is fraught with bias itself. And if the objective is to rid us of bias, that's a fool's errand. That's my.
I'm not suggesting that's necessarily the objective. I think that without avoiding a lot of the stuff that you mentioned, where the emphasis goes, how the story is told, how the interpretation of the story is told. I think that's the benefit. I think that if that is of interest to you, like, I don't look at history as being essential, to be honest with you. Like, it's a lot of history is subjective. A lot of it has to do with, like I said, interpretation of events. The events themselves could be factual, but the way they're interpreted could be, it could be open-ended. And as such, I think oftentimes there could be damage as a result of it. So let people go through history as an exercise in self-discovery, and emphasize. Hey, Monica, emphasize and seek out the information that really matters to them. This is just a thought exercise.
But how can you ensure that people are going to be able to interpret history in the way that best suits them if you deprive them of learning about it in the first place?
So I think that when you say you deprive them of learning about it, the very fact that you're teaching them may be depriving them of an alternate point of view. That's the danger to which I'm referring. I think that, people might be better off having their parents, for example, or their family or whomever, more so give them the version of events that they feel is most suitable. And if they're that interested in it, they can seek out more information to corroborate or cast doubt on the information they're being taught. But as it stands right now, I think it would allow, more time to be focused on essentials and, less time. And when I say history, I guess I'm talking about stuff like, so what might be called in grade and middle and high school, like social studies and things of that nature. But this is just a thought exercise. I'm not it's not a hill I'm willing to die on. I'm just trying to suss it out.
Yeah, I'm trying to engage on the thought exercise. I think it's a compelling one. I'm trying to engage it Socratically. But I'm also trying to be transparent about the extent to which I disagree. But I'm really, I guess, trying to nudge you in a direction so you can kind of see why for yourself. I think this calculus of just stick to the essentials. There's a judgment implied by that about what is essential and what isn't. And that's what I kind of was evoking when I went to the line drawing exercise. Perhaps the following analogy might help. There was a bunch of controversy during the pandemic. Maybe not for you, but there were people who disputed this over the concept of what counted as essential work. There were a lot of places all over the country where we shut down, shelter in place, all that kind of stuff. But there were exceptions being made for quote unquote essential workers. And what did and did not count as essential work became a subject of controversy because there was a judgment there. And that judgment was being made in kind of a top-down manner. And then a lot of people were being like, well, wait a minute, there's a whole domain of things that I, or a subset of the population, thinks of as essential, but the powers that be do not, right? And where do you draw that line? Being able to go to your local Walmart, that was cool. But being able to go to your local church wasn't. And I know a lot of church-going folks who were perturbed by that. In fact, in some instances, in certain locations, you could go to strip clubs as long as you social distance. That was cool, but you couldn't go to your local church. So there were people who were perturbed by that.
Yeah, I got you. So, when we get into the whole essential argument, it's interesting. I remember years ago, there being the 60 Minutes piece about a school. It was, a boarding school. And the students, they pretty much went to class only when they felt like it. If they felt like staying in, the majority of the semester and just playing video games, that was fine. And what was also interesting about it was they voted every year on the teachers to keep and which teachers to get rid of. So with that said, the outcomes for those kids were largely that of, general society. They didn't have worse outcomes. They didn't have better outcomes going to that school. Like the idea even about what's essential. I vaguely remember a This American Life piece where they talked about middle school. And at one point they were debating if there should even be a middle school. Like they thinking about getting rid of middle school in American history, but whatever. Ultimately, I do think that we could stay focused on things that are less open to propaganda. You can put propaganda in just about anything, but I think that there are subjects that are, there isn't as much wiggle room for propaganda.
And I think that's the point I disagree with. I think that pretty much anything can be propagandized. And so it makes the decision about what we consider essential as far as, our curriculum, our public school curriculum, let's say, and what we consider not essential. I mean, a lot of people have preconceived notions about what's important to teach, the youth. I know the conservative types tend to lean heavy into, concepts such as patriotism, love of country, things like that. How do you foster any of the values that you think are valuable in a society if you don't teach history? How can you foster love of country or patriotism or whatever it is that the MAGA crowd is super fucking into if you don't teach history at all? And if you're going to teach history at part, then it seems like your line drawing exercise becomes more fraught, because then you have to figure out what to leave and what to leave alone and what to leave in.
Which states aren't teaching history?
I didn't say any states aren't.
Yeah, that's not the subject quite, Monica.
Exercise. And
You came a little late, man.
every society needs a mythos. Without mythos, the society cannot, maintain itself. And history is, I agree with Anthony, but one of the things that, is some sort of propaganda, but propaganda is not, essentially a bad thing. It's what type of propaganda, if it serves a good goal or a bad goal. I think those are important questions to ask, because a society needs to be maintained. And, history is essentially the stories that we tell ourselves in order to build some sort of future. So it's always vectoring towards something. It's been the case since the recorded history, since, Hammurabi and Egyptians and Greek.
I don't think myth and propaganda are quite the same. You seem to put them in the same camp, and I can go with that. And I do think that a society needs a story. I think, Anthony, you and I agree that we tend to overemphasize history for sure. I think it would be great if we could put focus 80% on the present and the future, but I don't think it's zero on history. We have to know where we come from. It's all part of our identities, how we see our history and our choices together. And I think we'd lose our moorings if we weren't doing so. And I think I saw that 60 Minutes piece. I loved it. And I looked into that school actually afterwards. And I think it proves a lot of things about what kids, if they're organized, can actually choose for themselves in a healthy way, including their teachers. But I don't think it was about limiting what they would study. That example is about them having the choice to study what they want. I think from a propaganda standpoint, I think Black made the case that any form of study, actually, not just science and not just history, absolutely can be propagandized. And I think there is a distinction between myth and propaganda, because propaganda has a deliberate intent to make what's real not real in order to accomplish an end, for good or ill, mostly for ill by history's measure. And there's a distinction. And I don't know, do you think the phrase, I guess you disagree maybe, Anthony, the phrase of, those who don't know their history are condemned to repeat it? I mean, all of our conflict is about our history and who got to tell it right and who had it properly settled and all of that. All of it. But what we're talking about in the present is how to at least learn from that so that we can create a better future. We need some.
So I don't think Black necessarily made a really good case that all subjects can be propagandized. I didn't hear anything as related to math or, let's say computer programming or just like.
Can I give you an example? Can I give you a real example? Okay. There was a time when there was a case made that washing your hands before surgery was going to harm a patient. And when proof came up otherwise, and of course now we do, and we can't believe that doctors and surgeons never did that, there was a concerted effort to flood the journals at that time with how wrong that was, right? That's propaganda. It's not a myth. You're creating a story for a specific purpose because they didn't want to admit that they were wrong. I mean, that goes on all the time in history, all the time.
What subject? So, you named a couple, but just if you could just make a short list of subjects you think are, I guess, impervious to propaganda, I'll try to provide some examples.
So let's just start with the couple that I mentioned.
Hold on.
Okay, so
Anthony,
what's interesting about the computer science thing is like coding undergirds all of the algorithms that are manipulating people politically on social media. So that is not a source of propaganda is ironic, given that
it
reality.
Actually isn't. the use of it is maybe propagandizing, but
that's the point.
Subject matter
usable, Anthony, you just answered it. If it's usable in any way by somebody intending to propagandize.
Words, putting words, the strings of words together, sentences.
That's
writing
large language models are built on. What are you talking about? It's the currency of today. Language is the currency.
Wait. Just slow down. Because part of what you're saying is true. Like a lot of what coding consists in is just like writing a bunch of it's basically symbol manipulation. And you code things to carry out certain computational functions. That facet of coding isn't really that's not where the propaganda is, to your point. But it's in its utility, and it's also in philosophies around what you could employ these technical coding skills to accomplish, where the propaganda lies, right? So it's still within the domain of coding. Right, one of the reasons why these algorithms tend to lean left in terms of the kinds of outputs they produce is because they are a reflection of the philosophies of the people who create those algorithms. That's not a trivial matter, and I think that serves my point quite well.
On top of this, if you're talking about STEM, there's this whole portion of the training sessions within the woke cohorts that talk about the language around the more scientific subjects, like biology or even math. And a way of, I think actually Paulo Freire has written a work that is dedicated specifically to how infect the education with some sort of propaganda or political message. So what they would do, for example, they would look at the math problem and they would frame it in such a way as to look at some sort of social issue of, for example, inequity. And solving the problem itself gives them an opportunity to talk about that specific issue and present it in a very specific propagandistic way in order to, imprint it in the student's mind. So everything can be, propaganda.
Amazing point, Andre. Very well stated. Thank you. You make a great point. I really don't have pushback, but Excellent, well stated point. Thank you.
When the black man said it, it wasn't cool. But when Andre said it,
No. When somebody gets it, they get it. And man, Anthony is a man of integrity. He's definitely a pursuer.
I'm clearly joking. I'm joking, man. Yeah, I mean, I don't think that there's any domain of learning that is impervious to propaganda in some way. Even the ones that you may feel are safer, like science, because of its emphasis on objectivity, can definitely be propagandized. I mean, I think the pandemic is actually the most recent and perfect example of the way science can be propagandized for all sorts of purposes. And it really is, like, one of the biggest reasons why is because it's a domain of knowledge that requires, there's a lot of domains in science, and a lot of those domains require years of sustained study to be able to comprehend and grasp at a high level. And so laypersons typically don't have that level of engagement or years of experience of engagement with these complex subject matters like virology and epidemiology and things like that. And so those people can be told a lot of things that are demonstrably false, but they would never know because they just don't know enough. So the ignorance makes that population of people, they're not ignorant because they're intellectually lacking. They just didn't go to school for that, so they just don't know. A population of people like that can be told all kinds of things for all kinds of nefarious purposes, and from their point of view, it sounds believable or it sounds reasonable. And then that's, the problem of medical misinformation and medical disinformation became all the rage under the COVID pandemic. But then even the experts or the people who are kind of speaking on their behalf also engaged, I think a lot of times inadvertently, but maybe sometimes not, in misinformation and disinformation. And they were motivated by trying to save lives, presumably. So that, but their good intentions aside, it's still manifested in a lot of fuck shit, a lot of arguments, a lot of people feeling disenfranchised, a lot of people feeling like their liberties are being taken away for no reason, etc. Right? So, like, I think that's a great example in which, like, even something as solid and objective as medical science can be propagandized.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with that, and it was really just like I said, it was just a thought exercise, and I appreciate you guys taking the time to talk about it.
You are right.
And I actually learned
dwell on history too much. You are right. People definitely do dwell on it too much, Anthony. There's nothing wrong with that value at all.
Some people like history. They like to dwell on it.
Yes, I agree with that.
I mean,
Alan,
man. I don't want to.
I'd like to reply to that.
I don't want to get too philosophical, but I do think that there is an interesting argument to. I do think there's an interesting argument to be had about the importance of history. I guess all of the humanities subject matters, but history in particular. And I guess I can try to make the case people want. I don't want to go on a long diatribe, but I guess this main idea of the kind of argument one might give is, in order to know who you are, you need to know where you come from. And that is like a nice thesis that I'll leave y'all with about why teaching history is actually essential. It's not just that it's something that's cool. And I think that this is probably particularly important if you are a member of a historically marginalized group, because there's a lot of lessons of history that you and even members of, traditionally not marginalized groups can learn from, so that you don't repeat those negative aspects of history. You can consider that.
There's a lot of other aspects of essential, right?
One more thing.
That's really problematic.
Let me just respond to him, Anthony.
Let me finish the sentence. I'm almost done. It's the last one. You can consider that dwelling of a certain type but I don't think it's dwelling in the sense of just obsessing idly over it. I think it's being concerned about what the valuable lessons of it were, and then keeping those in mind moving forward. And I rest my mic.
All right, I was trying to get in to Alan, but Daniel, I haven't spoken at all, and I wanted to reply to Alan from 5 minutes ago. So Alan's comment was, some people dwell in our history and they live in it. And I think that's very sad. I think of driving a car. We need the rear view mirror to see where we've been, but we actually have to look through the windshield to see where we're going.
Ooh.
Thank you.
Well, I didn't mean that they dwell in it like it's sad. They find those things fascinating, is what I meant.
That's what I heard.
Yeah, well, okay. You heard dwell or fascinating?
No, I heard what you just said. You clarified.
He's
it.
agreeing with you, Alan.
But I wanted to bring up another point because people were talking about roots. The book and the and then the TV series, which was the first time I heard about it. And the reason why I bring it up, because there's been controversy. Well, it wasn't based on fact and there wasn't an actual guy, et cetera, et cetera. You can read about the history of the transatlantic slave trade, but did reading about it create as much impact and, dare I say, seem more truthful to people than seeing the miniseries on TV? Because I would argue seeing it, the fictionalized account of it, was more impactful and seemed more truthful to people. And that brings up the question of, well, when we're teaching, number one, when we're teaching any kind of history, how is it taught? But then also the question of, where do people find truth? And how do they find truth? And how do they relate to that? And aren't we often, admittedly, finding truth in things that we know are fictional to begin with? I don't know. Maybe somebody wants to answer.
I do, in this sense, and tying to what Black was saying about the essential nature of history to know where we come from, is these myths, not just propaganda that we identify with. I was alive at the time that Roots played for the first time, and I was in Canada, and it was a shockwave throughout the world, not just in the United States. Those who could pick up that feed, the amount of people that were all gathered watching together was like all the people gathered watching the landing on the moon. Nobody had any perspective on the dimensions of what that meant. And it took people from having no knowledge to knowledge of it and wanting to study, and then finding out some fact and fiction that we all know now. So I think that's the truth of art. That's why it's not just fact when we're searching for truth, it's identity. And I don't think like we should just classify every fictional story as propaganda. That sort of buries finding out what propaganda actually is. And you don't get rid of propaganda, Anthony, in that exercise I'm glad we went through. But it does come from us figuring out the difference between a myth and a fact, and a myth and propaganda. You know, and I do think history, I can authentically believe in both, that we tend to over-rely on history, and agree with Anthony on that. But 20%, if it is, let's say, is essential. That's a very significant part of our daily life, that we carry all the years behind us that produced us, along with whatever we're living in 2024. We have to know where we came from.
Just real quick, Black. Just real quick. Go ahead. No, because I want to one little
really quick, Black.
I'm gonna be quick.
Black.
Daniel said,
"No, you rest your mic, motherfucker."
With identity, and I would say it's not just identity. And to go back to what Alice said, it's not just about truth, but deeper still, it's about meaning. right? And I think that's one of the most important things about teaching history and other things adjacent to that in the humanities. Go ahead, Adam.
All right. So
Thank you for that.
what I'm seeing a lot of is history actually being used as destiny. I see a lot of people elevating history and historical significance to the point where they feel like this defines people of the here and now. What people's ancestors did, what people's ancestors didn't do. It defines the mentality, the heart, the morals of the current people. And I think that is a huge, huge problem I see in society today.
I agree with you.
I haven't said much, but I
just
genuinely think there is an issue with people understanding history. I'm just going to be really frank. People say history is important to them, but most people in America don't walk around with any more than 100 years of history in their head. They can't tell you about Reconstruction. They can't tell you about the colonial period. They can't tell you about the Civil War. They can't tell you about the Indian Wars. They can't tell you about the Banana Republic Wars. Hell, they can't even tell you about Korea. Most people emphasize history, and one of the unfortunate things in the historical community is that it started to be infused with these rose-tinted lenses of how people should see history with mid-21st century lenses on. The problem being, if most Americans say history is important, yet they only are walking around with 100 years of history in their head, then history is not actually important to them. What they mean is, walking around with things like throw into a conversation is important. Walking around with bits that are popular talking points is important. They don't actually mean history is important, because if they did, they would know more, right? Like, one of the, and I just say this to somebody who loves the subject, one of the most disheartening parts about history in modern America is that people will tell you how important it is, yet they will spend none of their time learning about how important it is. They won't read different books. They won't look at firsthand sources. They won't listen to recordings of, say, soldiers from World War I. Hell, one of the arguments over the Civil War can have more detail added to it by reading letters from Union and Confederate soldiers. Yet I would be willing to bet, aside from, I'm just going to say this, it's not a brag, just something I enjoy. Aside from me and maybe 2 or 3 other people on this stage, nobody's ever read the damn things. So how in the world can history guide how we operate when people have nothing to compare to? 100 years of history in human recorded history is nothing, right? Like, one of the things that is most astonishing in the last 15 to 20 years, there's a site in eastern Turkey called Göbekli Tepe that resets human settled civilization by 5,000 years, right? And I'm not expecting people to know about Göbekli Tepe, but my point is, we talk about history in popular culture as if it's important, and yet nobody genuinely devotes the time to it. It's like participating in local politics, right? People say it's important. They give lip service to what it is, yet they spend no time actually doing the work that will make anything any different. And history is the same. If all you're doing is walking around with 100 years of history in your head tops, then you didn't know anything to begin with. And you physically cannot learn the lessons that history teaches because you don't have a long timeline with which to compare human behavior. I'll end with this. History doesn't repeat itself because the events repeat themselves. History repeats itself because the behavior that precipitates those events repeat themselves. Humans repeat the same behavior over and over and over and over again. And our history is part of learning how to control those repeated emotions of love, greed, lust, gluttony, foolishness, evil. And without truly searching, we can never really genuinely say we understand anything. I hate to put it that way, because it makes most Americans out to be just absolute illiterate morons when it comes to this stuff. And I mean it in that way that it sounds. But if we were able to devote more time to it, listen to an audiobook or a podcast, we would walk away with much more in our head and much more to compare to. And I know I said I didn't, but I'll end on this. The education department, for example, all of the knowledge we've acquired in the Western world, say, from the early 1200s onward, relies on a way of educating people and a way of transmitting information. And the modern education department, in part, takes some of the way that it operates from those 1,000 years of lessons. And unless we know what those lessons are, we're doomed to repeat the same behavior that made them do the stupid, evil things in the first place.
So history is important, and I just wanted to clarify because I got lost a little bit, buddy, and I love listening to you talk many, many times. But on this particular one, I was not as clear at the end, or at the beginning, I should say, as maybe I am at the end. You are saying history is important, essential.
I'm saying history is critical toward understanding the way forward. And the problem is, we like to tell ourselves in America something that is not true. We like to tell ourselves history is important, and we like to tell ourselves that we understand it, when most Americans walk around with less than 100 years of history in their head. And you can't understand good decision makings or emotional trends in history unless you have more than 100 years. Having 100 years of history in your head, it makes you essentially functionally illiterate. I don't think it's what people intend, but that's the effect. If 100 years is all you have, then Lord, you have missed a lot of human experience.
I'll just say that I don't think people 300 or 400 years ago would have the luxury of being able to hold 100 years in their head, given the state of education.
I mean, I'll say the founders.
It could be a lot better. It could be a lot better. I agree with you. I just want to establish that whatever we think about what's corrupt about history or not done well enough about history or what shouldn't be taught about history, all those arguments, I think it sounds like the one agreement we have that the amount of history we should be teaching is not zero, right? We shouldn't toss it out.
Well, so
I think Black was making that case as I am too. Maybe he says it very differently, but it's essential.
So I'll give you an example in American history. Those who were taught at the nascent universities, the Browns, the Princetons, the Harvards, were taught classical education. Meaning you look at Greece, Rome, Babylonia, Assyria, one of the oldest cities in the Fertile Crescent. But if you were, say, Washington, you went to surveyor school and you ever went, you got the same sense of historical literacy from the performance of Shakespeare's plays. Caesar, Cato, Cicero, any number of other things. Point being, 400 years ago, people, the average people, walked around with more in their head than we do today. Not because they went to university, but because the popular plays and ways of amusing yourselves at the time used the past to tell stories. And we don't do that much anymore.
Yeah, I think I just want to say really quick, I agree with Marshall. As someone, and I have a master's degree, a doctorate, and half another doctorate in biomedical natural sciences, and scientists are the most siloed, often useless people. Darwin understood medicine, natural history. He was very well-rounded. Most physicians today have never taken a course in evolution. Can you believe that? Scientists are not only among the most arrogant asswipes on the planet, but they're so limited in their scope. There was a guy in here earlier who went to MIT, very good with numbers, but completely lacks empathy and appreciation for the human condition, always needs empiricism to drive him, and it's such a failure. I'm reading a great book about marketing by Harry, whatever you guys know his name, Harry, Wedgworth? He says research is great, but sometimes research doesn't tell us anything. often it doesn't tell us anything, and often it misses the boat. Now, you could argue that you need a sample size, a good sample size to do rigorous science and base your work on something substantive, right? But scientists are so siloed because they don't get exposure. They don't often read in their free time about the history of Western civilization, as Marshall talks about kind of the human condition, appreciating, what other people went through. There's so much poignancy to that kind of stuff. And physicians and I hate to say engineers too, they're so focused on things, or people in the life, health, physical sciences, etc., engineering, STEM. I think they're largely very siloed.
And I think from where you're saying, to make sure I'm clear on where you side on this conversation we've been having about what is essential in terms of education, that history is part of that it is essential to you. Is that right?
100%. I think history should drive so much else, right? Because strengths and weaknesses, where civilization failed, where it worked. You understand things in terms of a timetable of the evolution of, say, technology or the Industrial Revolution. You're going to find people who can do look at AI. AI cannot replace our appreciation for the human condition. It can replace the mechanistic aspects of exercising what we know about science, right, and implementing things. But history should be a driving factor. Sorry, Anthony's pissed at me, I'm sure, but that's my take.
Anthony is a curious man.
More than history, music should be essential to education. And I'm not biased at all in that opinion, but
it's absolutely essential. It's totally essential. So is language.
I think that the arts in general, not just music, get downplayed in the status quo as far as our public education system in a way that undersells their value. So the arts and the humanities are kind of bedfellows in that way. But there is there are considerations about the practical utility in the long term for given certain kinds of societal goals, and so that might account for why certain subject matter gets downplayed in certain historical periods and whatnot.
But with to Alan's point, there had been actually research done in that direction, and it turned out that there are no other activity that engages your brain to that extent. And there have also been longevity studies. I know UC San Francisco Medical School did this. University in Dublin did this, and I think one of the German schools did this. I mean, they were not collaborating; they did it independently. They came with the same results that children who engage in music prior to, I think it was age 13, 14, their brain develops differently. So if you have kids,
imagine, God says that he can work miracles through the wickedness of men, that these Muslims and stuff are learning the entire Christian scripture to try to defeat Christians in their arguments, in their theological debate. But imagine when this stuff actually starts to come to pass in Revelation and they see it, how many people are going to become Christians. And I tell the BHI this, I don't know if anybody's BHI, but I tell them all the time, so many BHI, so many Muslims, so many different people and stuff like that are going to read the scriptures trying to defeat Christian theology and Christian understanding of scripture, that they're all learning the book. And then when this stuff starts to come to pass, it's going to be undeniable for so many people. Just like even Jeremy was willing to concede that if that were to happen, he would have to look at, reevaluate it, which is pretty awesome.
I'm a Muslim and I don't use the Bible for none of that stuff you just said.
Yeah, but I mean, if you were a Dalgandist, then you would.
What?
Muhammad Hijab and Ali
Alibaba or whatever his name is, Ali Dawa or whatever.
Oh, an apologist.
Hijab and those guys on Speaker's Corner and stuff are learning the scriptures inside out.
Yeah.
Islamic Caesar here online is starting to learn everything about the New and Old Testament. And when this stuff comes to pass,
Rich, can I ask you something? Do you have a lot of interactions with Muslims outside of this app? And if you do, even if it's not a lot, can you describe the delta between your interactions with those Muslims versus the Muslims you interact with on Clubhouse?
Oh yeah, I mean most Muslims in general don't know their scriptures, just like most Christians don't know their scriptures.
I'm sorry, and then just to be clear, so you're saying that your interaction with Muslims in the real world is based on the second you engage with those folks, you talk about scripture and you realize that
I'm specifically talking about the people that are anti-Christian evangelists. They even Toby Singer. Toby Singer is a world-renowned evangelical Jew who hates Christianity, but he's learning the entire New Testament. So hopefully when he sees this stuff coming to pass in Revelation, on earth, that he'll maybe reevaluate it. That's all.
But I guess the point I'm trying to make is that in your experience, do the Muslims that you encounter and interact with on Clubhouse, are they representative of the everyday Muslim?
No, because like I said, the majority of Christians, Jews, and Muslims don't know their scriptures. 90% of the Christians I know in real life and 90% of the Muslims I know in real life don't even know anything about their scriptures. They parrot stuff, Jesus says to love everybody. Jesus said, repent for the kingdom of the Lord is at hand. He went and chased the money changers out of the temple. I mean, it's all different types of things. And he also comes back in Revelation and wipes out the entire earth and makes it clean again.
But to be fair, he also never mentioned the scriptures. He never once said, worship me. He said, follow me. But he also said, as a commandment,
100% said he worshiped me.
Love thy neighbor as you
would
love
yourself. He said,
yourself.
I'm God and worship me. Jesus said that.
The meek shall inherit the earth.
Of course,
right? Yeah. These are commandments.
Yep. And Jesus said, I am God and worship me multiple times.
So what I'm saying is that if most Christians or even most, followers of Abrahamic faith go about their day trying to be happy, do good, because that's what they think their faith tells them to do, and raise kids and just contribute to humanity, do you feel they're being more Christ-like?
It's based on salvific issues. So, do they believe the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit eternally existing as one God, three persons? Christ came, died, rose again on the third day, atone for our sins. Hold on, atone for our sins, and that you're saved by faith alone and not by your works. These are salvific issues.
Question: where did Jesus say, "I'm God, worship me"?
Oh yeah, he said, "Truly, truly, before Abraham was, I am." He called himself the great I am. Also in Revelation, he calls himself the one.
No, I'm talking
John
about
1
Jesus.
talks about that
Jesus said that. So
I know. Jesus says, truly, truly, I say to you, before Abraham was, I am. And if you knew the Tanakh and you actually studied this, the I am spoken about is where God is speaking through the burning bush to Moses. And Moses says, what shall I call you? And he says, I am the Alpha, the Omega, the beginning and the end. And as soon as Jesus says, truly, truly, I say to you, before Abraham was, not before Abraham was born, but before Abraham was even thought of, and the beginning of time, when God knows the beginning and the end, which I don't know if you're Muslim or BHI, but you agree that God knows the beginning and the end. God knew Abraham before even the creation of the universe. And that Jesus is saying, truly, truly, I say to you, before Abraham was, I am. And even at the time of Jesus, uttering the word I am was the declaring yourself as God. That's why the Jews call him Hashem, which means the Jews themselves call God Hashem, which means the name. That's why Jews don't say Yudeh-Haveh, Yahweh. That's why they don't say God. They don't say Allah. They would say Hashem, because they honor and respect and fear God so much that they would only utter just the word, the name. So Jesus says, I am. He declared himself to be God. He said, truly, truly, I say to you, before Abraham was, I am. I'm trying to finish, if you would let me finish. And they picked up stones to stone him to death because they knew he was declaring himself to be God.
No, that's not what the book
says. That's exactly what it is. He says, truly, truly, I say to you, before Abraham was, I am.
The scripture where Jesus said, I am God, worship me. Can you show
Yes, because by definition of him being God and declaring himself to be God, he is saying to worship him because God is to be worshipped.
I heard what you said.
Are we to worship God?
Where Jesus said, I am God, worship me. Which you just stayed on this stage.
An explicit
in the
verse.
Bible where it says, Jesus said, I am God, worship me. You said Jesus
no interpretation.
That, right? Hold on. You said Jesus said that. That's what you said. So I'm asking you to show me in the scripture where Jesus said, I am God, worship me.
Okay,
no
John 8:48 through 59.
Where is that? Tell me again.
John 48 through 59.
John 48, 59.
John 8, 48 through 59.
John 8, 48,
the Jews answered him, Are we not right in saying that you are a Samaritan and have a demon? Jesus answered, I do not have a demon, but I honor my Father, and you dishonor me. Yet I do not seek my own glory. There is one who seeks it.
She's always dolled out. She would have everything. No, she was breeding them at first, but her children stopped visiting her, so now her dogs are her children. And can I be honest with y'all? My cat finna be her child too. My cat is going right to her. I think she's coming over here on Saturday. Yes, she is. Bye-bye, kitty. She is holding her for 2 weeks. She is holding her for 2 weeks. But I know she loves animals. If I can leave my cat with somebody's, I don't want to leave her at home. I'm over this nigga because I just know that, he only loves my cat because he loves me. But she's going to take care of her for 2 weeks because I know she's an animal lover. Yeah, if y'all see this shit, I wish I could show y'all this thing.
System.
I'm not sure.
What
I understand the word.
Marzuki system? Is that Arabic word?
Yes.
Marzuki?
I know.
What would be in English? You mean about the Islamic system?
No, Al-Marzuqi, which is like this guy, he was, they took the king, put Marzuqi into the power. Then Marzuqi, he said, hey guys, British, I'm sorry guys, I'm not giving you all the oil. I'm not giving the oil to the Brits. I have to stop it. Then the CIA comes back and put the Shah back into the power. Then the Shah actually abuse his power. The Iranian people revolt. Then they choose the Islamic State. So this is not Iranian people. This is the West. The West done this. All the West did this to Iranian. This is how Iran. Morocco. I don't know about Morocco, but I think about Iran. This is what I may believe. I think you may stupid believe. I think this is what you guys did to do Iranian people. That's why they don't trust anymore anything coming from the West. Because what
the Iranian people, and there's Iranians in the room, that they don't have a problem trusting the West. I mean, what you're referring to, some of it's true. But the Iranian people, look, I'm going to shut up. We have two Iranians here. They can talk for themselves.
Let me tell you, Mark. See, Iranian are people who believe in peace. They like to live in the whole world as a kind of the great place to live with whatever that is needed. But this regime and also the ideology of Islam in terms of the government is a terrorist base and whatever else. I am not going to insult any religion. That is not my part. We believe human rights and those things. But in my country, the religion has ruined all of my history, my belief, or whatever that it is. So Iranian now, most of them, maybe more than 90% of them, are against any dictatorship and also against any religion. This is, they may not want to interfere with the religion, with the private part of their life, but what it is over there is that they don't believe that. Maybe they have changed their mind after 30, 40 years when they face with the kind of ideological regime, but now what it is, they love Western countries and the culture. They love to be modernized. They like to be life. If you look at their motto, woman, life, freedom, is what they think right now and what they are fighting for that.
Well, I understand. I really believe. I think I actually trust you, your point. But you cannot deny how many Iranian people that have been really like when there is like a Marzouki system. When you remember when there is national.
Okay.
Just hold on. Just hold on.
System. You're saying something that we're from Iran and we don't know what it is. If you're talking about Islamic laws,
national of the oil. When he want to take the oil from the Brits, he want to take the resources of the country to belong to the nation, and they changed the system back then. The CIA come in there.
How was this related to majority of Iranians? I really don't understand. I like you to enlighten me.
To understand it is like, there is people that believe actually in a country, and there is people outside of the country, like America. This is America doing this. And this is back in, I think, in 60s, whatever, probably 50s. And they come and they manipulate these people.
Sorry, Mark. Somebody down there is asking to come up. Wahab. They want to participate in the discussion.
Oh, sure. Sorry. Didn't see that.
Welcome, Wahab.
Good evening, everybody. Good morning and good evening, everybody. I'm just here to explain. I'm going with Jeff and Mr. Khan. So Islam is not belong to Iran. Marzouki family, which Mr. M or I don't know, is talking about that belong to Iranian south part, and they are at the present are living in, if I'm right, about United Arab Emirates. They are living there and belong to the oil industry. But let me tell you something. Islam does not belong to Iran. They are practicing Islam since 1400 years ago, but they're already called part of Islam, which is going to Shiite or something, as they are trying now since the last 460 years ago. So if you just study our history, which is going till 7,000 years ago, none of Iranian they're Muslims or something else. So that's why, let me tell you something. The nearly future, which is coming now, and the revolution which happened by Iranian people in Iran is on the way still. The future of Iran is absolutely Islam free. I'm not Islam fighter. I'm not against your beliefness or something, but we will get our country back, and we will back again to our origin beliefness, which is has nothing to do with Islam, if you understand me, guys. And just look around what happened in the Middle East with Islam activities, Islam beliefness, Islam way of life. I don't know what they call that all, but definitely in the future, which is coming now, I would guess about maybe in 2 or 3 months, Iran will start definitely the new life with the most strong revolution in the world, which happened by the ladies, by the women, and is still going on. That's it.
I'm still confused. What were you talking about? Were you conflating some other word with Mossadegh? You talking about the government before the?
I'm talking about the government.
Not you. I'm talking to Isa.
Oh, sorry.
Or Masin. I don't know which is his first name.
No, the whole point is like, why we have Islamic Republic and why there's a Khomeini that Iran kicked him out, a Shah kick that guy. A Khomeini kicked him out.
All right, we get it. You think the West did something wrong by getting rid of the Shah or getting rid of Mossadegh?
No. I'm not saying that.
Yeah, I mean, it's irrelevant. Like, the people of Iran hate the current government. You want to complain about the West? They're not complaining about the West.
No. I'm talking about.
What's funny is Morocco is trying to be part of the West. Your king is actually very good. Like, what are you trying to?
No. I think there's a big deal. Right now, I think even in Afghanistan, my brother, America spent 20 years in Afghanistan. They try
the topic of the room isn't how America ruined the world. If you that room is actually down the hall. If you want to have that conversation, I invite you to go there.
You're sucking up the air.
No.
Hold on, Isa. Like I said, I'm Moroccan. I live in America. The topic of the room is not how to blame America for everything that's wrong with the world. There are lots of rooms on this app for that. This is not that one. So if you want to have if you want to have a conversation about Iran, where you're not the only one arguing with Iranians, that's fine. You can have that conversation. But if you want to just take the time, waste my time by blaming America for everything, which, America has some culpability. You're right, but that's not what anyone in the room wants to discuss.
Okay.
So if that's the topic you want to discuss, I invite you to go do it elsewhere.
Leave. Be like a tree. Be like a tree. I see lots of trees right now. They got leaves on them.
Well, that's not very nice, but I would like to.
No, I was extremely polite. And I gave you a lot of time to
you just rampaged on us, saying the U.S. sucks and Iran is fucking the shit. Okay, bro. Listen, I know before this 1980, when it was a beautiful place and it was Persia, and lately it's turned to shit. So we don't like it, and if you don't like it, then get the fuck out. Have a nice night.
Never mind that. As a Moroccan, I'll just say you are defending the government that supports Algeria, which is your enemy. So I think you need to check your loyalty to your government and your country, because what you're doing isn't right, correct, helpful, or honest. And with that, I will move on to people who are more useful.
And no more warnings. No, thank you. I was about to put the fuck.
Actually, Jeff and Green, I think we are here for not telling that we are supporting which government. We are here as a human, and we will enjoy from talking from different.
That's right. That's why we're here.
This is actually a social room. The only reason I changed the title to this was because we had a bunch of haters come in.
Jeff, can I tell you something about Morocco? May I tell you something about Morocco?
Sure, Mahab.
You guys have a nice tagines. I've been to Morocco for 8 years ago to different cities. I got the tagine fish, tagine chicken, tagine meat, different race. And Moroccan are very, very, very easygoing people. I couldn't understand why the M couldn't follow us, but Moroccan are nice people and very easygoing.
Yeah, I mean, the anti-West thing isn't common in Morocco. I'm not gonna lie. He's a unique fella.
Yeah, I used to be there too. I didn't see any kind of extremism activity or reaction. And that was, even I visited the Muhammad II Palace, and that was really great place. And they opened
It's in
the whole
Agadir,
palace
right?
to the people.
Kai, this is in Agadir, right?
No, that was in Casablanca. Agadir is, Agadir is very, very beautiful place too.
There is
So
also
why not
another.
go to-
There is also another palace of King of Saudi Arabia. I've been to Tagazut and around. All belong there, but nice people around. Nice people.
Yeah, even in Rabat, in Marrakesh Square, I really enjoyed during the night time. Everywhere dancing, different thing. Whenever that I was there, that was really great.
Okay, I changed the title of the room in honor of you fellas.
Oh, that's great. You're in tours too. Oh, that's
Maybe we can move off.
You didn't ask us. You didn't ask us how come that Iranians so in love with Morocco.
Look, I'm Moroccan. I know why you're in love with Morocco.
No. It wasn't me. It wasn't me. No. I was just a war tour. I got a war tour. That's why I was visiting Morocco. But we are not for that case which you are meaning.
I mean, sadly, my mother came from Algeria, so like I have to, a little bit further back we were Moroccan, so can't really support Algeria these days. Sarah, you keep leaving us. What the fuck?
I'm here.
I'm sorry. I should have said that better. Sarah, you leave. I miss you. Sarah June Azizam.
Yeah.
No, I'm here. It's just I'm not used to your room being like political talk.
I know, we're like, what the fuck ourselves.
I know, even I'm like, what the fuck?
We're all like, what the fuck? What the fuck is going on here? This is not what we're supposed to be doing.
Everybody goes through the phase when they first hear me actually talk international politics because they're like, wait, you're the analingus guy. Why do you know stuff?
Right. You like to get gas. I don't understand why you know so much about politics.
Why do you know stuff about politics? I don't get it.
I don't get it.
You know,
Doesn't
we
make
talk
any
about
fucking
mac
sense.
and cheese,
How do you know all this shit?
lasagna.
That's what they're thinking. How do you know all this shit? This doesn't make any fucking sense. You're like talking about sex. Doesn't that make sense?
That's right.
In this room, the talk is about food, sex. What else?
Food, sex,
Stuff like that. Once in a while, the anti-Semitic people come down there, and then they talk shit, and then we say something, someone says something, and then they get removed, and that's about it.
Yep.
But right now, it went to where? It went to whole world politics.
Hello, Glenice. Welcome to my room.
Hello.
Glenice. And I know what your real name is, but hi.
Hi.
And I was controlling myself, Jeff, to not say anything to that M guy. I don't like to hear. I don't like to hear people talk shit about America.
I kind of know where your temper lives.
Yeah, like I don't even like to hear Americans talk crap about America. And then no.
No. Plus you're Iranian, so you don't like Arabs to begin with.
He's like defending Iran's government and talking crap about U.S.
That was really, I gotta say that was kind of new for me. A pro-Iranian Moroccan.
I'm funny. It's coming from Morocco. Much more funny.
Well, we don't know if he was. Was he?
No, he was Moroccan. He was Moroccan.
Yeah, you can find different people from different countries, so no problem. But the best word that you said, the best word was no, Sarah, to all of this.
What was funny though is I really didn't get a sense when he realized I was a Jewish Moroccan. He went out of his way to say we love the Jews, we love this, we just hate America. It was very strange.
That is really strange how it could be.
And we all love America. I'm like, No. He needs to stop.
If you're talking in Arabic,
I mean, I'm North African. No one there really speaks Arabic.
I know that. I don't like to say that you talking. Even in that time in Morocco, everybody says we are from North Africa. We are not Arabic, but just I'm talking about the language, not about the.
Oh yeah, but the language
Arabic country.
The language they speak is 70% not Arabic. They call it Arabic, but it's really Tamazight.
Yes, Berber and French, I guess.
But I don't speak that language. I grew up speaking French. Just French.
What is
Parle français, monsieur.
Oui, je parle français.
Okay.
What is Tamazight? Is that different language?
Is the North African Arabic.